Are you wanting to adopt from foster care, but you have about 1,000,001 questions? Well, this video today is perfect for you. Today I'm going to be answering questions that you asked on my community tab on YouTube, all about foster care and adoption. So let's jump in. Really quick before I start, if this is the first time you're clicking on one of my videos, hello, my name is Katie, and I'm so glad you decided to hang out with me today. I am a mom to 3 kids ages 5 through 12, and we adopted all 3 of our kids from foster care as waiting children. And now I'm an adoption consultant, and I work to help other families from all across the country do the same. Most of my consultation calls are basically Q&As with every question that person has being answered, also with typed up notes for them, also with research. So if you would like to go a step further and work with me, I will include that link below. If for some reason you have a lot more questions, which most people do, you can reach out and we can work together on getting those answered for you. All right, let's jump into these questions. Okay, question number 1 is from Audrey, and she asked, "I love to hear more about how you built a bond with your kids before and after they moved in." She's been matched and she wants some more ideas. So this is a great question. So we had a slightly different situation with both adoptions because we adopted our youngest first and she was super young. So she didn't fully understand what was going on. So one thing we did that was recommended by our agency was we created a family book, is what we called it. And what this was is that I took a picture of me, of my husband, of our dog, of our house, of my parents, of my husband's parents, anyone in the family that would be close. And we created a children's book, basically, that said, "This is the mom in the house. Her name is Katie. She likes to do this. This is the dad in the house. His name is Nick." And we made it very simple. We laminated and bound it. And the first visit that we had with our daughter, we gave her that. So from there on, she could look at that in between our visits and kind of get familiar with us and feel comfortable. And honestly, she loved that book. Her foster mom was like, that's the book she wants to look at every day. She loves seeing the pictures. She loves the picture of the dog. So it might sound like a weird way of bonding, but since she was so young, I think it was a way for her to continually see our faces and hear a little bit about us and see what our house looked like so that it wasn't this big surprise when she came to our house for the first time. With our older kids, it was a little bit different. So we actually were matched with them and then we met them right before COVID. I mean, I'm not kidding you. The day before everything shut down was the day we met them. So we met them, we went and actually saw them in person, and then we couldn't see them in person for months. And so what we did during that time was we talked on the phone, especially with our oldest at the time, because our son was not, sometimes boys aren't the best at talking on the phone, and definitely not 5-year-old boys. But we would talk to her on the phone, and we came up with this list of just like fun questions we got from online that kids would like that you could use to bond, and she loved it. She loved when we would ask her all the questions and we'd answer them, and it was just a fun way to kind of get to know each other and be more comfortable. We would also send them letters in the mail during that time. We might send them like a coloring page or a little bracelet or just something small just to kind of show them we're thinking of them. And that was just a really cool thing to do. I think that especially with our oldest, who was 9 at the time, it really helped her feel a lot more comfortable with us and like she knew us a little bit. So that's how we bonded beforehand. And honestly, this is such a big topic. I know if I answer this all right now, I am going to talk for way too long. So I think I'm going to put this on my list of longer video ideas because I think this would be a really good one for a full-length video. So thank you for that idea. All right, the next person asked, what was it like to suddenly have school-age children? How did you go about finding a school for them that felt like a good fit? And did you consider any more alternative options like homeschool? All right, something to know about me is that I have been a teacher for 10 years, and so I've worked in a private school before in another country, and then I've worked in a public school setting since then. So homeschool wasn't really on the table for us because it just wasn't possible with our work situation. My husband was in seminary and doing like part-time pastor work, so somebody needed to be bringing in the money, so that was my job. I will say the big decision that we had to make about their schooling was between the school district I work in or the school district in the town we live in. So the school district that I work in is known more for being a better school district. They have more resources. And it's just overall considered like honestly a lot better than the school system in our town. So obviously I liked the idea of sending my kids there, and they could go there because I worked in that school. But a big question for us was about diversity, because there is quite a bit of diversity in some of the schools in my district, but the one that my kids would have gone to, there was not much. Whereas in our town, there's quite a bit more diversity and more people who look like my kids and have the same skin color as them. And so that was really hard. Ultimately, we decided to send them to my school district, even just because of school holidays lining up and all of that. So for the first 2 years, they all went to my school district. And then we recently moved my son to the school that's actually in our neighborhood where our new house is. So he has switched and he actually loves it. And I think it's been a really great fit. My youngest daughter will be going there as well. My oldest daughter is in middle school now. So she is still attending middle school in the city where I work because she just was adjusted there and didn't want to have to change, which totally get. So those are important factors if you're adopting transracially, is to really think about the diversity level. And, you know, if you're already a white family or just a family who's a different race from your child, it might be good for them to have some diversity in the school they're at. So that has been a good fit, I think, for our son this year. That definitely went into my considerations. And then you asked, like, what was it like? For me, it was actually a lot more natural to have school-age children than it was to have a 1-year-old when we adopted the first time, because I always kind of thought we'd end up with slightly older kids. I did not expect to be adopting a 1.5-year-old at the time when we were matched with her. And because I've been a teacher for so long, I'm just used to kids. I've taught middle school, high school, and elementary school. This year I'm in elementary school. And so I don't know, I just know how kids work at those ages. And I find it easier to have structure for them. And I don't know, I get it. The hardest part for me was being on the parent side of school and getting all the papers and having to remember to send them back. And so that definitely gave me a different perspective, because as a teacher, you're like, why can't these parents turn this stuff in? And I'm like, oh, because being a parent is really a lot. So that was definitely a big adjustment. Okay, this next question I think is really good, and I want to touch on this. So it says, does taking medication for anxiety or depression make you ineligible to be a foster or adoptive parent? Because I know it does for international adoption from some countries. Okay, so this is a hard question to answer as a blanket answer. I have not personally heard of it being impossible to adopt in any state because you're on medication for depression or anxiety. The big thing that they look for is that if you've had depression or anxiety in the past, that you've treated it, that you have coping skills and things in place. In my mind, you being on medication shows that you're taking care of it and you have found a way to cope with it well. And so I don't think that should be a problem unless you still are actively struggling with like episodes of like huge episodes of deep depression or anxiety. I wouldn't recommend that you step into adoption if you're in one of those seasons, because for me, with both times, anxiety and depression is something that I have struggled with, and I've been open about that on this channel. But I know for me, like, I was in a pretty good place before both of our adoptions. Like, I felt pretty stable. I was in a great headspace and everything. And then as soon as we adopted, like, I spiraled. So I cannot imagine if you were already starting at a low place, what that could do. And it did take like therapy and some medication and some time to get back to where I am now, where I feel totally fine. Obviously, I'm working part-time. There's a lot of things I've done to kind of cope with that. But at the time we adopted, I was not on medication. I was not doing anything like that. I didn't have any of those supports in place. And so I didn't experience that personally. But I do know that for most states I've read, it doesn't seem like it's a problem as long as you are currently in a good headspace and you have ways to deal with it. So that's a great question. Okay, Heather said that she loves my channel. That's so sweet. She said, is it difficult to get foster kids enrolled in school or daycare? I did not have a difficult time getting my kids enrolled in school because it's public school and they like have to let you enroll your kids. So, and honestly, the foster care agency will like push for that. You have to get them enrolled right away. It's just the law in most cases. And so that was not a problem. I have heard about daycare being a lot more difficult, especially if your kid has some trauma and some like acting out, especially at the beginning. They might have that because they're struggling with getting used to everything. I have a friend whose kids have been kicked out of multiple daycares because of their behaviors, and it's been hard for them to find like a trauma-informed caregiving place. And so that could be a challenge. I would definitely start researching daycares now. If you are thinking of adopting, I would start researching right now and really think about that. But can I just throw this out here? This is a benefit of adopting older kids, because if you're adopting older kids, they're going to be in school and you don't have to worry about that. So just something to consider, just something to consider. Okay, so this next question is about birth order and bio kids, and she's talking about how she would like to adopt siblings when her son is a little bit older, like 7 or older, and she wants to know if she adopted kids around his age, would it be kind of screwing him up or would it be helpful for him? And so I'm going to do my best to answer this. Obviously, I did not have biological kids, but something I will say is that if you have a child around that age and then you adopt older siblings, even older than them, that could actually be pretty hard. I think because that child has been the only child for quite a while, and then all of a sudden someone's older than them could be a little bit of a struggle. The other thing I will say is that the child you adopt may feel jealousy towards your son, just because he's already going to be the youngest if you do adopt kids that are older. Which I just think the youngest child gets a lot of attention usually in most families, and sometimes just has it a little bit differently than other kids, because they're the younger one, they're the cuter one, all this stuff. I think it could be challenging for your adopted child to feel like not only are they the younger kid, but they also have a better relationship with you because they've been with you forever. So that's something to consider. I don't think that's something to say don't do it, but that is good to be aware of so you can kind of confront that from the beginning. I've heard several families say they want to get a kid like the same age for their kid to play with and all this stuff. The one thing I want to say about that is that you have to realize most kids, even if you have a 7-year-old and you adopt a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old, that adopted child emotionally may be quite a bit behind. So even though they have the body of a 7-year-old and they have the brain of a 7-year-old, they may have the emotional intelligence, I don't know how to say intelligence, like the emotional level of someone 3 to 4 years younger, and especially at the beginning. And this can be hard. I know this was really hard for me because I'm like, you are this old, why are you acting like this? But it's because of everything they've been through. They haven't had that stability. And eventually they'll make leaps and bounds and most likely start to catch up with where they're supposed to be. But just know that if you adopt a kid being like, oh, they can be friends and hang out, and it's like a lot of times your adopted child may gravitate a lot more towards kids several years younger than them. And they may get along with kids better who are several years younger because in terms of what they like to do and play with and the way they process things, it's more similar to a much younger child. So that's just something I would consider. I don't think there's ever like a super right or super wrong answer with this because all the situations are different. I just think if you go into it really intentionally and you are aware of the difficulties that could arise and you kind of confront them and have those open conversations with your son and with your adopted kids, you can be okay. I would definitely want to make sure your child was prepared and that he was also on board with it and that he was also aware of some of the struggles that could happen so it's not a shock. But I think if you can work up to that over time until he gets a little older, I think you'll know much more as you get closer. So that's a really good question. Okay, I think I'm going to answer 2 more of the questions for today, and then I'm going to save the rest of these questions for a second video, a different Q&A. I don't know if it'll be up next week or if I'm going to wait and put a week between them, but there will be another Q&A video coming up with those answers. So Nathan asked if we met any of our adopted kids or foster kids' biological parents. And he was actually adopted from South Korea when he was young. Oh, that's really cool. I love seeing adoptees on the channel. He said, keep up the great work. Oh, and he has a YouTube channel. Oh, cool. So if you go to my page, if you go to my community tab, you could go check out his channel if you're interested. Okay, so we have met our oldest kids' biological mom and also biological siblings. We have not met the dads, and with our youngest, we have not met the mom. I have communicated with her through like Facebook, but it's been kind of on and off, and I'm trying to kind of gauge if she's interested in some sort of communication, but it's just been really inconsistent. So that one is a little more uncertain. But yes, we did meet our oldest kid's mom. We met her, I think, 2 different times in person when they were still in foster care, technically, like they were a legal risk adoptive placement. And we also have maintained contact with her even now. So we're 3 years in, almost 3 years in this experience, and we still maintain contact with her. I email with her, I send her pictures, I update her on how the kids are doing. And her and the kids also have a monthly Zoom call. So eventually we may move that to be more, but we've just really kept it very capped for now, just to kind of see and gauge like how it is for our kids and how they respond to it. I think there is so much benefit in maintaining some contact because it really helps my kids understand that their mom, even though she wasn't able to care for them, she loves them. And she loves them in her own way. She can't love them in the way where a mom might, be able to take care of you well and take you to school and be at your programs and take you to the doctor. Like, she's not able to do that, but she is able to love them in other ways. Like, she spends time talking to them and she asks how they're doing and she sends them pictures. And so that has been a really cool thing. There are times where it's like a little awkward or maybe even a little frustrating, but I would say overall it's been an extremely positive experience. And I will tell you, I know you're an adoptee, but if you are an adoptive parent and you're considering this, a lot of people will tell you not to do this. They'll be like, oh, that's going to be so hard for the kids. They're not going to understand. Like, why would you let them talk to the parents? And it's just like this whole thing. I mean, we had so many people tell us it was a bad idea. But I had read and researched a lot, and everything I found showed that when you can maintain some contact, if the parent is safe, that it really helps your child with identity, and it helps your child not feel like you're just taking them away from their birth family and never letting them see them again. And so that is something personally I'm really passionate about, that you do meet the parent and that you do maintain some sort of contact. Now, we have not seen her in person in I don't know, maybe a year and a half or 2 years, close to that time, maybe a year and a half probably. We have not seen her in person. And you know what? We might in the future, but I'm just taking things really easy and really slow and kind of seeing what works. I would also love for my kids to be able to see their older sister in person because she just seems like an awesome kid. She's adopted by another family member, or I don't know if she's adopted, but she's like in their care of another family member. And she just seems like she has a really good head on her shoulders. She reached out to me about contacting them, and I think it'd be awesome for them to be able to see her in person. They do talk to her on Zoom sometimes. But yeah, that's something I'm passionate about. I'm kind of rambling about this, but I really think if you can maintain some sort of contact, do it. And even for the sake of the parent, and I know it can be hard, especially if the parent was abusive or neglectful or things like that, it can be hard to understand why that parent still deserves to know about their kid. I think in most cases, if it's not severe abuse or anything like that, the parent would still love to know how their kid is doing. So even if you just email them and you don't, maybe the kid doesn't even have contact, but you do, or the kid can have contact through you through email, I just think that could be a really beautiful thing to do to allow them to just know that their kid's okay. Because I know that's a big concern for a lot of parents who have lost contact with their biological kids who were adopted. So that's just a big thing on my heart, and I hope that you'll consider that when you adopt. All right, last question. It says, my husband and I are first responders, a firefighter, and a police officer. Will this make it harder for us to be approved to foster since I have 24-hour shifts? Well, first of all, thank you for your service. That's pretty crazy that you guys are both first responders. I cannot imagine what life is like. I'd be curious to know if you already have children and what you do in these situations. I don't think it should hurt your chances. I know in our foster care classes, there was a family, the husband was a first responder. I don't think the wife was. I don't remember what she did, but they were fine to adopt. I think as long as you can make sure someone's supervising your children, then you'll be okay. I will say it could limit you in terms of certain issues or needs the child might have. If they need 24/7 supervision or just a lot more supervision, they may say you're not a good match for that child, but it doesn't mean you wouldn't be able to adopt. I also think that if you're interested in adopting slightly older kids, like school-age children, like kindergarten and up, you would probably be totally fine because most of the time they'll be in school anyway. So yeah, I don't think you're gonna have a huge problem. I think it's possible, like I said, that your pool of kids you could be a good fit for may be a little bit smaller, but you still should totally be able to adopt. It just might look a little bit different. That would be an awesome question to ask an agency before you start the process as well. And just be as upfront and open about that as possible from the beginning, and you'll get a good idea of whether or not they can work with that or if they've had experience with other families who are in that same position. And with that, I'm gonna end this Q&A video. There are some other really great questions that like I said, I want to answer. I will do it in another video, I promise. If you have a couple other questions you want to throw at the bottom of this video, I can either put those on my long list of video topics or I can add it to the Q&A question for the next time. If you enjoyed this video or found it helpful in any way, if you could just give me that thumbs up, it makes a huge difference with my channel. It helps more people find my videos and ultimately helps more families know how to adopt from foster care. Also, subscribe to my channel if you have not yet. A lot of you haven't. A lot of you watch my videos like all the time and you don't subscribe. I know because I see the analytics and it's like all these people are watching my videos again and again, but not subscribing. Just subscribe and then you can see my community page on your For You page and you will be able to ask questions next time. Anyway, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. It was great to take some time to answer your questions. I really appreciate you taking the time to ask those, and again, I will answer the others, I promise. I hope you're having a great day, and I will see you next week.